Now, from Atlanta News First, the issues that matter to you. This is On the Record.
We're barreling toward one of the longest shutdowns in American history unless Democrats drop their partisan demands and pass a clean, no-strings-attached budget to reopen the government and pay our federal workers.
I don't get why my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are getting emotional about their failed approach, their my way or the highway approach to governing, as if we're supposed to just bend the knee to extreme Republican demands.
You just heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson and Democrat Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries as they are commenting on the current partial government shutdown, now about to enter its third week, as both sides seem to be dug into intractable positions over the continuing funding of the United States federal government. This is On the Record for Wednesday, October 15th, 2025. I'm Tim Darnell, joined as always by my friend and colleague, Rick Folbaum. Rick, we were talking last week, and you and I have been talking throughout this entire partial government shutdown that began on October 1st, 2 weeks ago, that it's going to take really a crisis of an unimaginable proportion to bring Republicans and Democrats together to the bargaining table to figure out how to reopen several very vital and important agencies at the federal level. Tell us where we are right now.
Well, I mean, you use the word intractable. I think that these situations always appear to be intractable until there's a solution, and then suddenly everything will come together. But it doesn't appear like we're anywhere close to something like that happening. But you're right. If we go back to the last government shutdown, which was the longest government shutdown in the history of the country. It took place during the first Trump administration. It lasted for 35 days or something like that from December into January of 2019. The straw that broke the camel's back had to do with airline delays and flight delays and workers, air traffic controllers and TSA workers who were doing mass sick outs, basically calling out sick and resulting in flights being canceled and delays for the flying public. And that was something that was really seen to be, a major black eye, enough so for President Trump and Republicans at the time that it brought them back to the bargaining table. That fight was over funding for President Trump's southern border wall that he had initially promised that Mexico would pay for, and then wanted to fund that with federal taxpayer dollars, and the Democrats were not in favor of that, and that is what led to the shutdown. This time the shutdown has to do with health care spending and these Obamacare subsidies that have been in place for years, which are now set to expire at the end of this year. And when they do expire, if they're allowed to, it will result in healthcare premiums going up, skyrocketing, really, for millions and millions of Americans, many of whom live in red states like here in Georgia, who rely on the Obamacare Affordable Care Act exchange for their health insurance. And without those subsidies, that insurance might become unaffordable for them, leaving them with no health insurance at all. And so that's the battle that Democrats are waging, and their sort of calculus is that because there are enough Americans, both Democrats and Republicans, who would be impacted negatively by these subsidies going away, that is what's going to give them the political upper hand and eventually lead Republicans to the realization, Democrats hope, that they have no choice but to agree to extend these subsidies, which would then bring Democrats back to the bargaining table and lead to them signing this continuing resolution, which has already been passed by Republicans in the House, that would reopen the federal government at least for another
Thank you for watching.
weeks, giving them more time to hammer out a more long-term type of spending plan. But where we stand now is that neither side seems to be willing to budge. And in fact, you mentioned the word crisis a moment ago. It seems as though President Trump and Republicans are looking to create crises by laying off tens of thousands of federal workers who work for agencies that the administration considers to be Democratic-friendly agencies, agencies that Republicans and conservatives have never really been fans of, that this is an opportunity, this government shutdown, to really get rid of those agencies altogether by firing the people who work there. And we're seeing this across the board in a number of different areas, most notably for us here in Georgia, Health and Human Services, that department, which of course oversees the CDC, headquartered here in DeKalb County, where there have been hundreds of layoffs. In fact, there were so many layoffs that were issued last Friday night, some 1,300, only to have about 700 of those CDC employees receive emails the following day saying, hey, you were sent that termination email by mistake. In fact, your job is safe. You are not terminated. So there seems to be some confusion on exactly how those layoffs are to take effect and exactly who is to lose their job and who's to keep their job. But it is something that Republicans are looking at as a way of ratcheting up the pressure on Democrats. We see it happening at those agencies levels. We see it if you go, there's a story this week about a video message that was recorded by the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, which comes out and says the Democrats are to blame. If you're having any problems with your flight today, and this is a video message that is shown to folks as they're waiting to go through airport security, so everybody sees it, and the message is, if you're having problems with your flight today, you can blame the Democrats. And a number of airports, including the airport here in Atlanta, Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International, are not showing that video message, saying that it is too overtly political, and that the airport gave us a statement saying that they aim for a more sort of neutral, politically neutral experience for the flying public that uses the Atlanta airport. But you do see this as a tactic that's being used by the Republicans, again, to try to ratchet up the pressure on Democrats, to try to force them to come back to the bargaining table and at least pass this short-term continuing resolution that would reopen the government without Republicans having to agree to any of the Obamacare subsidy extensions that the Democrats are insisting on.
This is our On the Record with Atlanta News First podcast for Wednesday, October 15th. We talk in this broadcast, in this podcast, I should say, we look at a lot of the national issues that are affecting the American political spectrum. And it's very interesting you mentioned the video that is showing in TSA's security lines at various airports across the country, with Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying this is a shutdown that is being caused by the Democratic Party. Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader, House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries. I don't recall there being any government shutdown in the past where the executive branch is really using a lot of its leverage to really shift the blame across the aisle to the opposing party. Case in point, this very controversial video that you mentioned that Hartsfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport told us yesterday, it is not showing. There are several other airports across the country that are refusing to show or opting out to show the video. And now there seems to be a lot of speculation as to what kind of consequences these airport facilities might face in retaliation from the White House.
Well, I think that in past government shutdowns, we have certainly heard from the president, whoever the president was at the time, and perhaps the vice president as well, blaming the opposing party for the shutdown. That's not new. What is new is to see all of these other federal agencies that fall under the executive branch, like the Department of Homeland Security and other agencies, where you have these political messages that are being communicated through them. And we've heard from a couple of legal experts who have said that this perhaps is in violation of what's known as the Hatch Act. Right. That's a law that was passed back in the 1930s that forbids really anybody except for the president and vice president in the executive branch from using overt political language. That these are government agencies, federal agencies that are meant to serve people all over the country regardless of their political affiliation, and the Hatch Act is meant to ensure that they don't become politicized in some way. But you're right, that's exactly what is happening with these video messages from Kristi Noem, with other website messages. If you go to certain government websites, you see the first thing you see is a big banner across the top saying that the Democrats are to blame for the government shutdown, which is impacting, X, Y, and Z, you name it. And so we're seeing a lot more of that than we have in the past, and that does seem to be something that's new. But as far as each side assigning blame to the other, that is not new. That is sort of shutdown 101, because at the end of the day, it's the party that feels as though they're going to get blamed for the shutdown. That is typically the party that caves and gives in and brings the shutdown to an end.
And we see a lot of back and forth and political gamesmanship from both parties where, I will go ahead and mention this. We had a very interesting sit-down interview yesterday here at our studios in Midtown Atlanta for Atlanta News First, where Kelly Loeffler, who is the head of the Small Business Administration, came in for an exclusive interview with our own political reporter, Doug Reardon, and she was very adamant that the shutdown is being caused by the Democrats. She's calling it the Schumer shutdown and Schumer layoffs, whereas on the other side, Democrats are saying all the Trump administration has to do is come back to the negotiating table, and we're happy to hold whatever discussions are necessary to solve the issues that are hindering both parties from returning to the negotiating table. But going back to the interview that we had with Kelly Loeffler yesterday, Doug Reardon, who conducted the interview, and you'll see portions of it this Sunday on the Record with Atlanta News First, airing every Sunday at 11 a.m., he showed a video, a small clip of a young lady who is a minority business owner who's very concerned, who is on the enrolled in the Affordable Health Care Act, or the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare. And he was showing her on his cell phone a video where she was expressing her very valid concerns about whether or not her health care benefits are going to run out at the end of the year. And Kelly Loeffler's reaction was very sympathetic. These are legitimate concerns that should bring people back to the bargaining table. We're now about to enter into the third week of the government shutdown. Crystal balling it for me, for all of our readers and viewers, how long do you think this will go on?
Well, I mean,
35 days? That's the longest in history.
That would be the longest in history. I don't make any political predictions. I stopped doing that a while back when I just had an awful string of wrong predictions, and so I won't go there as far as giving you a number of days that this government shutdown lasts. But it does appear as though both sides are prepared for the shutdown to last a while. Each side feeling as though they have the upper hand and the better argument to make to voters, both in their base and voters even on the other side of the aisle. Democrats feel as though health care is a winning issue for them. It has been a winning issue for them in past elections. Of course, Obamacare is the signature achievement of the Obama years, which are really sort of the salad days for the Democratic Party. The last time the Democrats have really, sort of held sway with very strong public opinion polls numbers around the country. It's been a while for Democrats to be able to latch on to something like that, and they feel as though they've got their issue here. For Republicans, they say, look, we want to pass this clean, continuing resolution, this bill that will keep the government running. It doesn't have any politics in it. It is just a straight, clean bill. And for the Democrats to stand in the way of voting for something that is politically free of any kind of controversy, that reflects poorly on Democrats. And so both sides really feel as though they have a good argument to make. It'll be interesting to watch the public opinion polls. Right now, we're not really getting any sort of firm numbers here, but as this plays out, we certainly will. And I think that another interesting thing to watch for, Tim, will be members of each of the party peeling away. If you start to see Democrats saying, well, look, we really need to get the government back up and running, and if that means passing this short-term continuing resolution, let's do it, and then we'll go back to the bargaining table and fight for health care. If you see Democrats doing that, that's a sign that Democrats are starting to feel the pressure. Right. On the other hand, if you see and hear from Republicans like we have, from Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, our congresswoman from Rome, Georgia, here in our state, if we hear Republicans coming forward and saying, look, these healthcare premiums are going to impact a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, and make healthcare unaffordable. We need to fix this, and we need to go and extend these subsidies like the Democrats are asking for. She has broken from her party's leadership on that, but if there are other Republicans who join her, well, then that's another sign on the Republican side that they're feeling the heat and that this might be coming to a close sooner than later.
Well, this is just one of the many issues we're continuing to follow here at Atlanta News First, AtlantaNewsFirst.com, and On the Record with Atlanta News First. A reminder, watch On the Record with Atlanta News First every Sunday at 11 a.m. Rick, you have a very interesting interview coming up in just a little while, an exclusive interview with Jason Carter, who will be in the station just shortly after we're finishing recording this Wednesday, October 15th podcast. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about.
Well, Jason Carter has endorsed Jason Estevez, who is one of the Democrats who is running for the Democratic nomination for the chance to run in the general election for Georgia governor. And he is a former state senator here in Georgia who has left his position in the state Senate in order to focus entirely on his gubernatorial race. Jason Carter, of course, has the most famous last name in Georgia politics as the grandson of the only U.S. president to have ever hailed from our state. He, of course, has made a name for himself over the years, including an unsuccessful run for governor as a Democrat back in 2014. And a lot of people thought that he may get into the race this year. However, his wife is ill, and he did cite that as the reason for not getting into this race. But we want to ask him why he is throwing his support behind Jason Estevez when there are other Democrats. It's a crowded field right now. Former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, according to polls, really has a convincing lead right now among Democratic voters. And so why is he supporting Estevez rather than Bottoms? What does Estevez bring to the table, in his opinion, that Bottoms doesn't? All of those questions will be asked, and I'm looking forward to speaking to Jason Carter, as you said, just about 20 minutes or so from now.
And we'll be streaming that interview in its entirety on our podcasting platforms, wherever you download your favorite podcast. You'll also be able to watch and listen to that interview, as well as Doug Reardon's full interview with Kelly Loeffler, head of the U.S. Small Business Administration. All of those issues and more we're continuing to cover here on Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com.
Thank you for watching ANF Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and your community stories, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch us on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. To join the conversation on YouTube Live, visit our channel and hit subscribe. You can also listen to the Atlanta News First podcast by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.